At this point in the discussion, I had asked her more about her personal history. She is an elderly woman and has lived a very interesting life. I love to hear about this. Regardless of their beliefs, I think there is much that we can learn from the older generations about how life was 60, 70, and even 80 years ago. So I really appreciate her willingness to open up and share all that she did. Of course, I'm not going to share that part because there's a lot of personal information that would not be appropriate to put online. So here we pick up at the end of that part as she moves back into some doctrinal points she wants to make. This is another low-key portion of the conversation in which we didn't really disagree on a whole lot. There are a number of places where I could have pressed harder because we really only agree on a very surface level, and if we dug in at all, we would have had some pretty significant disagreements. I know that she wanted to try and move the conversation in a specific direction, talking about how the world is just getting worse and worse, so we must be getting close to the end. So I interacted with her comments, but did so with a view of the history of the world in mind and how so much of what has happened in other empires and kingdoms is now happening to ours in the Western world. My purpose in that is to show how we should not be so nearsighted as to ignore history or what is going on in the rest of the world. It's easy, and it's human nature, to just look around us and base our views on only what is immediately before our eyes, ignoring the bigger picture. There have been difficult times throughout history when people thought that this must be the end of the world because of their circumstances. Of course, we should be always waiting for Christ's return, but that is not the same as living in fear because of current events.
It's hard to imagine, but it's neat to think about, what it was like then for you.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of changes, that's for sure.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
In the world and
yeah.
in society.
Yeah, definitely. All the technology and infrastructure and the way culture has changed. I'm sure that's
Yeah, and all these changes really for me, my own personal opinion, has really just enhanced my faith in what I believe in.
Mm-hmm.
Because all the Bible scriptures and all the prophecies, like when we read 2 Timothy 3, 1 to 5 there, and it talks about people not being in agreement, children disobedient to their parents,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And all these terrible things. That's like reading a newspaper now.
Yeah, definitely. I think about like Romans 1 and God turning them over to, their sinful ways.
Their own fleshly desires.
Yeah. We certainly see a lot of evidence of that in our culture, that it's, I think we've seen that. You see that in different civilizations, and you see them basically fall apart once they move in that direction. And I think that's, I talk with a lot of people and they say things like, we see, if our culture keeps going this way, God's going to punish us. And it's like, well, no, what's happening right now is actually God turning us, our nation, our culture over to their sinful ways, because if we're already there, He's already, lifted His hand of grace.
Certainly, God does. That's really a good point, isn't it? Because God doesn't force anybody to change.
No.
And if we look back on when Adam and Eve sinned, the issue there was self-government. They wanted to rule themselves.
Well, yeah, they wanted to be God.
And they didn't want to listen to anybody else.
Yeah.
They felt that God was withholding something good.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It implicated that.
Yeah.
And He said that you don't need God. You could be like God.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need God to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
You can make your own decisions.
Yeah.
And that's really then the crux of the matter. That's why we're having all these terrible things, because God has allowed time to go by. We've had every kind of government. We've had monarchies, we've had dictatorships, we've had communism, we've had everything.
Yeah, well, I don't know if there could be any different new kinds of government. Things are always moving in odd different directions and whatnot, but yeah, we seem to be certainly heavily moving back towards sort of a socialist kind of ideology in our country, I think. But yeah, we see that. I think it's interesting to compare the different kingdoms of the world over time. Babylon and Greece and Rome, and when you look at their rise and fall, and it seems to follow the same pattern. And I really think the Western world is really plummeting into that same direction, where there was a period of time, especially like when the Reformation happened, and when North America was settled as well, there was a lot of biblical principle there that they were built on. And as the nations move farther and farther away from that, we're just watching them destroy themselves, right? I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if we see Western Europe very quickly become Muslim. It's already been so infiltrated by the Muslims, and they don't have any biblical ground anymore. They've got multiple generations now of people that have never even picked up a Bible before. And we're not far behind that.
Yeah.
In North America,
and of course,
we're seeing that.
In the Western world, like also in 2 Timothy 3 and verse 5 there, it says that having a godly devotion, one of the things that would be identifying in this wrong generation would be having a godly devotion, proving false to its powers. Have you got your Bible handy?
Yeah, I'm just pulling that up here. Yeah, proud, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous. Yeah.
And notice what verse 5 says.
Having a form of godliness, but denying its power. Have nothing to do with such people. So, yeah.
So having an appearance of godliness or being religious, right?
Yeah.
If they're looking to the Bible but only picking and choosing what they want to take out of there.
Yeah.
Isn't it incredible to hear that from the mouth of a fiercely devoted Jehovah's Witness? What she is describing is exactly what the Watchtower does, and she doesn't see it. I didn't focus on that in this part of the conversation, however, and maybe I should have, but I wanted to get into a few other areas and see how she would respond.
And isn't a form of godliness.
No.
It's a form of godliness, but isn't godliness in the true sense.
Yeah, and I think even beyond that, you can look at just what we hear from people today so often say, well, I'm spiritual but not religious, and so they mean there's some sense of spiritual they understand, but they don't want anything to do with the Spirit of God. They just want something spiritual. So
if they're spiritual, okay, but then they can pick and choose what they want to out of the Bible.
What I was describing there might sound different from the Watchtower, but it's really not. They pick and choose what they want to teach and try to spiritualize many things. I know that the average Jehovah's Witness doesn't really believe miracles happen today, so they might seem like they're not dabbling in the spiritual. But there is a spirit behind the Watchtower, and they are submitting to it. I think that's why so many Jehovah's Witnesses, when they wake up and leave the Watchtower, jump immediately into New Age and occult practices. It's familiar to them.
Yeah.
And of course now the trend is to accept homosexuality and transgendered people to accept that as being normal, because that's the way it should be, they say.
Yeah, and it's not even just accept it now, they want you to celebrate it.
Yeah, they want you to celebrate it.
Yeah.
So that's easy to do, isn't it? Because then, this is, as I say, oh yes, I'm spiritual, but then are you really?
Yeah.
John in his letters in second John, there he says that if you say you love God and if you don't obey His commandments, you're a liar.
Yeah, definitely. And that's and I like to when I run into people who say that too, that they're all about being spiritual, but not about God, not about religion, then something I often think about and need to say too is just, well, if you're dabbling in something spiritual and it's not of God, then what spirit are you working with there, right? Like, and people tend to just think anything spiritual is good, and in fact, when you're getting involved in, New Age.
Really good point there,
yeah, thanks. It's because I see it all the time. Even I just went to see a naturopath a couple months ago, and she's definitely very into all of that. The chakras and all that kind of stuff, and
it's, that you want to cringe when that happens, don't you?
Yeah. I have to just stand up and say, no, that's, first of all, it's not science, it's not medical. And second of all, it is spiritual, but it's not a good thing that it's spiritual. That's actually a very dangerous thing you're playing with.
And do you notice, like now, the films and the stories, the books, are all about, like, the spiritual things, which are demonic, really, aren't they?
Yeah. Sometimes they're just basically make believe and silly, and sometimes there's definitely a love for the demonic and dark spiritual things, and a lot of trying to paint over it and call it something that it isn't. Just say, oh, well, it's spiritual, so it's good, when in fact they don't. You can really look back to this. This was the kind of practice that happened, during the Roman Empire too. That's what their temples were doing. They were.
And that's really what brought down the Roman Empire, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a factor, but it was the same as here. It was also their embracing the homosexuality and all the sinful behaviors that our culture looks just like at this point. So, yeah.
I knew she had intended to take the conversation in the direction of discussing Armageddon, and probably why she believes association with the Watchtower is a person's only hope for that, though she might not word it quite like that for me, of course. So, at this point, I decided to just go ahead and ask her about Armageddon. We'll pick up there in the next video.